Okay, class, so bear with me today. It might get a little confusing, but we're just going to review some different shapes. When you were in kindergarten, or maybe even before kindergarten, you were taught different shapes. So you knew what a circle was, what a square is, what a rectangle is, what a triangle is. As a fourth grade, about to be fifth grader, you need to know what quadrilaterals are, and they have some fancy names based on different characteristics they have. So before we get into the shapes, let's just review. If lines are parallel, that means that they don't cross. They will never cross. So remember, an example of parallel lines is like that. They're never going to cross. They could be like this, they could be like this, but they will never cross. That's what parallel means. Also, before we get into those shapes, let's remember what a right angle looks like. A right angle is exactly 90 degrees. It looks like that perfect L, that perfect square corner. So we need to keep these things in mind for us to classify our quadrilaterals. Now, I'm actually going to go a little bit backwards. I'm actually going to end with overall what a quadrilateral is. To be the most specific, let's start out with a square. You know what a square looks like. Perfect square. Now a square, what makes it a square is that it has 4 equal sides. That's what makes it different from a rectangle. It has 4 equal sides, and it has 4 right angles. That's what a square is. Now, a square is our most specific shape. We also have rectangles. Now, squares are just a more specific rectangle, because a rectangle has 4 right angles. What's different is that a rectangle has 4 right angles, but a square has that and 4 equal sides. So a square is just like a more specific version of a rectangle. And just in case you've been in quarantine too long, a rectangle looks like that. Okay. Now, squares, like I said, have 4 right angles, so they're similar to a rectangle. Squares also have 4 equal sides. Those 4 equal sides makes them an example of a rhombus. A rhombus has 4 equal sides. So a rhombus, I kind of think, looks like a kind of like a square diamond. I would compare a rhombus to a diamond. All of the sides are the same length, and I didn't draw that perfectly, sorry. Those aren't supposed to be right angles. So a rhombus has 4 equal sides, but it doesn't have the right angles that a rectangle has. And a rectangle has 4 right angles, but not 4 equal sides. A square has both. So think of a square like if a rhombus and a rectangle had a kid, they'd have a square. The 4 right angles of a rectangle, the 4 equal sides of a rhombus, you get a square. Now, all of these, going back to what I reviewed to begin with, parallel sides, they don't cross. All of these, the opposite sides are parallel. So this side is not going to cross with this side. This side is parallel to this side. This is parallel to this side. Obviously, the sides that are adjacent cross, but opposite sides are parallel. So if we look, let me see, I'll just use 2 of these. So a rhombus, this would be one set of parallel sides. This is one set of parallel sides. A square, this is one set of parallel sides. This is one set of parallel sides. A rectangle, these sides are parallel. These sides are parallel. So all 3 of these shapes are examples of parallelograms. A parallelogram is called a parallelogram because a parallelogram has 2 pairs of parallel sides. So those shapes are all parallelograms. And a square is still a parallelogram because remember, it's like a rhombus and a rectangle had a kid, they had a square. So all 3 of these are parallelograms. A parallelogram, 2 pairs of parallel sides. I usually picture a parallelogram as a rectangle or a square pushed over. So a parallelogram would can look something like that. Keeping in mind that a parallelogram could be a rectangle, a parallelogram could be a square, a parallelogram could be a rhombus, because they all have 2 pairs of parallel sides. Moving down our chain, a rhombus has 4 equal sides. It is also similar to a kite. A kite. Now picture a kite exactly like a kite. With a kite, you have sides that are the same length, like this top left is equal to this top right. Let me zoom in here. With a kite, this side is equal to this side, and the bottom right is equal to the bottom left. Those are called adjacent sides because they're touching. So with a kite, adjacent sides are equal lengths. Adjacent sides are equal lengths. So you might be thinking, well, Mrs. Tolan, a square, those sides are equal lengths, and you would be correct. A square would be a very specific kite. A rhombus is also an example of a kite. Adjacent sides are equal lengths. So a kite. Oh, what's going on with my screen? Okay, I don't know if I lost you, but my screen went to its screensaver. So a kite has adjacent sides that are equal lengths. A rhombus is an example of a kite. A square is an example of a kite. Okay. I know, I've probably lost you. Just bear with me. Now, a kite, you'll notice the sides are not parallel. Like this. Ooh, this side would end up crossing with this side. So a kite does not, and if I line it up, you can see they'll cross. A kite is not an example of a parallelogram because parallelograms have to have two pairs of parallel sides and a kite doesn't. Another shape that is not a parallelogram, let me see what colors I haven't used yet. Another shape that is not a parallelogram is a trapezoid. A trapezoid has one pair of parallel sides. So I always picture trapezoids like this, maybe, where the top and the bottom are parallel, but the left and the right are not. So a trapezoid is not a parallelogram because it only has one pair of parallel sides. Okay, now to get to what I originally said we were going to learn about, quadrilaterals. Notice that all of these shapes have something in common. The square, the rectangle, the rhombus, the parallelogram, the kite, the trapezoid, they all have something in common, and that's the number of sides that it has. So all of these shapes are quadrilaterals. Quadrilaterals have 4 sides. So all of these shapes are examples of quadrilaterals. You can kind of think of it like a family tree. All of these share the characteristic that they have 4 sides. They're all quadrilaterals. Now, a trapezoid only has one pair of parallel sides. A kite, the sides that are touching are the same length, and a parallelogram has 2 pairs of parallel sides. Then from the parallelogram, I can have 2 pairs of parallel sides with 4 right angles, which would make it a rectangle, or 2 pairs of parallel sides and 4 equal sides, which would make it a rhombus. If it has both, then it's a square. Okay, so think of it like a family tree. Okay, now I know that was a lot to take in, but hopefully it made a little bit of sense. We're also going to practice this tomorrow and through your station activity and through the questions below, okay?